He confessed. When I wasn't ready to listen, the first time I realized I was already in too deep, she was stirring sugar into a cup of coffee she never finished. I was sitting across from her, pretending to read something on my phone, pretending not to notice the way her wrist moved slow, deliberate, like she wasn't in a hurry to be anywhere else. The cafe was almost empty, late afternoon light slanting through the window, dust floating in it like it had nowhere better to be. Neither did I. Neither did she. She was in her mid-40s, maybe older, confident in a way that didn't ask for permission. Not loud, not dramatic, just settled, like she had already lived several versions of herself and kept only the useful parts. I was in my 20s, still trying to figure out which parts of me were permanent and which were just noise. We weren't supposed to be anything. That was the unspoken agreement. We met because of work, because of timing, because of small coincidences that didn't feel important at first. Conversations that started safe, weather, deadlines, complaints about burnt coffee, and slowly slipped into quieter territory. Things you only say when you're not sure why you're saying them. She listened when I talked, really listened, didn't interrupt, didn't rush to fix things. Sometimes she'd tilt her head slightly, like she was filing my words somewhere private. That alone felt dangerous. I noticed things I shouldn't have. The faint line near her mouth that deepened when she smiled, but softened when she thought no one was watching. The way she paused before answering personal questions, not to avoid them, but to choose honesty carefully. The way her silence never felt empty. That afternoon, the cafe felt too quiet. The espresso machine hissed once, then stopped. Her phone buzzed on the table, face down. She didn't check it. I didn't notice that. "You're staring," she said, not accusing, just observant. "Sorry," I said quickly. Too quickly. "I was just thinking." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "About?" I almost told her. I almost said her name the way it sounded in my head, softer, heavier. Instead, I shrugged. "Cowardly. Safe." She went back to her coffee, then stopped stirring. The spoon rested against the cup, trembling just slightly before going still. That tiny movement felt louder than anything we'd said. There was an age gap between us that everyone else would notice first. I noticed other things. The way she exhaled when she thought she'd said too much. The way she kept her distance physically, like she didn't trust herself, or me, with less space. I wanted to reach across the table. I didn't. Wanting felt like crossing a line already. "You know," she said after a while, eyes still on the cup, "sometimes timing ruins things more than people do." My chest tightened. "Is that something you've learned, or something you're still learning?" That made her look up, really look at me. For a second, the air shifted. Her gaze lingered too long to be polite, too long to be meaningless. I saw something flicker there, recognition maybe, or fear. "Both," she said quietly. I swallowed. My mouth was dry. The words had been building in me for weeks, stacking up behind my ribs, pressing harder every time she smiled, every time she left first. I felt ridiculous for wanting her the way I did, and even worse for not being able to stop. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. Before I could say anything, her phone buzzed again. This time she picked it up. Her face changed, not dramatically, just enough. A tightening around her eyes. A decision being made. "I should go," she said, already standing, already putting space between us. I stood too fast. "Wait." She hesitated at the door, hand on the handle, back to me. For a moment, I thought she might turn around. Instead, the doorbell rang as someone else walked in, and the sound cut straight through me. I hadn't confessed yet, but I knew I would. And I knew, somehow, that when I finally did, she might not be ready to listen, that I didn't see her for 3 days after that cafe moment, and it shouldn't have mattered. We weren't anything. We hadn't crossed a line, but the absence sat heavy, like a word stuck on the tip of my tongue. When she finally texted, "Are you free this evening?" I stared at the screen longer than necessary. My hands were steady, but my chest wasn't. We met at her place. That alone felt like a risk. A quiet apartment on the 3rd floor, the kind that smelled faintly of books and something warm she cooked often but rarely talked about. The lights were low, not romantic on purpose, just practical. She was practical like that. She apologized for leaving so abruptly at the cafe. I told her it was fine. We both lied a little. She poured wine. I declined at first, then didn't. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, an empty space between us that felt intentional, guarded. The TV was on, volume low, something neither of us was watching. "I forget sometimes how young you are," she said suddenly, eyes still on the screen. I laughed softly. "I forget sometimes how old you think you are." That made her turn. A small smile appeared, then faded. "It's not what I think. It's what it is." I wanted to argue, but I knew what she meant. She had lived a life before me. A marriage that didn't end loudly, just slowly, with conversations that stopped happening and affection that turned into routine. She once told me she stayed longer than she should have because leaving felt like admitting failure. I told her once, half joking, that my last relationship ended because I cared more than she did. I didn't mention how often I replayed arguments in my head afterward, wondering where I'd gone wrong. How being wanted still felt unfamiliar. "You shouldn't get attached to people like me," she said quietly. "Why?" I asked. She hesitated, looked down at her hands. "Because I don't always know how to stay." That honesty landed harder than any rejection could have. I shifted closer without thinking. Not touching, just closer. I could feel her warmth now, the faint tension in her posture. There was more she wasn't saying. The real risk. The reason this felt like standing near an edge. She had a son only a few years younger than me. She'd mentioned him once, casually, like it was a detail she didn't want to spotlight. That fact sat between us, unspoken but loud. I wondered if she saw him when she looked at me. I wondered if that scared her. "I don't want to be a mistake," I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. She inhaled sharply. "You wouldn't be, but you're afraid I will be." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached out, slow, deliberate, and adjusted the sleeve of my shirt, fingers brushing my wrist for half a second longer than necessary. That tiny contact sent something electric through me. "I'm afraid," she said softly, "that you'll want more than I can give." I looked at her hand, still near mine. Didn't move it away. What if I already do? The room felt too quiet again. The TV murmured uselessly in the background. She finally looked at me, really looked, and this time she didn't pull back. Her fingers curled slightly, almost holding my wrist. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. But she didn't let go either. She pulled her hand back first. Not abruptly. Not like she'd been burnt. Just enough to remind both of us that we were still pretending there were rules. "I should ask you to leave," she said. Her voice didn't match the words. It was too soft, too careful. I nodded, even though my body didn't move. Okay. Neither of us moved. The knock came before either of us could say anything else. 3 sharp taps on the door. Close. Familiar. Her face changed instantly. Not panic, something heavier. Guilt, maybe, or resignation. "That's my sister," she said, already standing. "She has a key, but she still knocks." I don't know why. I stood up too fast this time, heart pounding. The room suddenly felt smaller, like it had been shrinking without me noticing. I ran a hand through my hair, stupidly aware of how young I probably looked standing there. "She doesn't know you're here," she added. It wasn't a question. "No," I said. "Of course not." She opened the door halfway. Her sister's voice filled the space immediately, warm, loud, effortless. The kind of person who took up air without trying. "I was in the neighborhood," she said, already stepping inside. Then she saw me. The pause was brief, polite, curious. "Oh, E." I introduced myself. She introduced herself. We shook hands like normal people, like there wasn't something fragile sitting between my ribs. Her eyes flicked between us once. Twice. Not suspicious, just observant. "I didn't know you had company," her sister said lightly. "I didn't," she replied. Too quickly. I excused myself soon after. Claimed an early morning. Leaked badly. At the door, she didn't meet my eyes. She thanked me for coming over like it was a business meeting that had gone on too long. Outside, the air was cold enough to sting. I stood there for a moment, staring at the building like it might explain something to me. That night, my roommate noticed. He always did. "You look wrecked," he said, leaning against the kitchen counter. "Her again." I didn't answer. "That's not good, man," he continued. "She's older. She's been married. She has a kid. You're setting yourself up." "I know," I said, too quietly. I tried to pull back after that. Took longer to reply to her texts. Declined an invitation. Told myself distance would dull whatever this was. It didn't. We ran into each other a week later by accident, or something pretending to be one. The grocery store. Same aisle. I reached for pasta. She reached for the same box. We froze. "Sorry," she said. "Sorry," I echoed. She laughed softly, then stopped herself. Her eyes looked tired. So did mine. "I've been thinking," she said, lowering her voice. "Maybe this isn't a good idea." My chest tightened. Seeing each other? Any of it? I nodded. Again. Always nodding. "Okay." She watched my face like she was bracing for impact. When I didn't argue, something shifted. Not relief. Something closer to disappointment. As we turned to walk away, her fingers brushed mine. This time, it wasn't accidental. She didn't pull back. Neither did I. Someone cleared their throat behind us. A stranger. Nothing important. But it was enough. She stepped away first. "I'll see you," she said. Not goodbye. I stood there holding a box of pasta I didn't need, watching her disappear down the aisle, knowing two things with painful clarity. I should let this go. And I wasn't going to. I didn't plan to show up at her place that night. I told myself that twice on the drive there. Said it again when I parked. Said it a fourth time while standing in the hallway outside her door, listening to the muted sounds from inside. Laughter. Not hers alone. That was the moment something in me cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just enough to hurt. I knocked anyway. She opened the door, looking surprised, then conflicted, then careful. Behind her, a man stood near the kitchen counter, jacket still on, glass of wine in his hand. Late 40s. Confident. Familiar in a way that didn't need explanation. "Oh," she said. "I didn't know you were coming." "I didn't either," I replied. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. The man smiled politely. "I'm Daniel." I shook his hand. His grip was firm, practiced, someone who had done this before. Ex-husband, I guessed. Or someone trying not to be. "This isn't a good time," she said gently, but her eyes stayed on me longer than necessary. "I know," I said. "I just needed a minute." Daniel glanced between us, then at her. "I'll give you two some space," he said, already moving toward the door. Not offended, not oblivious either. The door closed behind him, and the silence hit hard. "You shouldn't have come," she said. "I know, you said that already. I keep knowing things too late." She folded her arms, like she was holding herself together. "This is exactly why this can't happen. Because he exists." The word slipped out sharper than I meant. Her jaw tightened. "Because you do." That stopped me. "I'm not a phase," I said quietly. "I'm not a distraction." She looked away. "You don't know what you are yet." That hurt more than I expected. I stepped closer before thinking better of it. "I know how I feel." She laughed once, breathless, like it scared her. "You're 20-something. Feelings come easy at that age. That's not fair." "No," she agreed softly. "It isn't." Her eyes shone, but she didn't cry. She never did in front of me. That restraint, that constant control, was part of what pulled me in and pushed me away at the same time. "I've already ruined one life by staying when I shouldn't have," she said. "I won't do it again." "By leaving too early?" I asked. That made her look at me. Really look. The space between us disappeared in a single step. I could smell her perfume, faint and familiar. My hands hovered uselessly at my sides. "This ends badly," she whispered. "Maybe," I said, "but not trying feels worse." Her breath caught. I saw the moment, the exact second. Her resolve faltered. Her hand lifted, then stopped just short of my chest. "If you say this," she said, voice trembling now. You can't take it back. I didn't hesitate. I love you. The words hung there, heavy, irreversible. Her eyes closed, just for a second. When she opened them, she leaned in, not enough to touch, but close enough that it felt inevitable. And that's when the phone rang. Loud, sudden, jarring. She froze. I didn't move. The space between us stayed unbroken. For now, the phone kept ringing. She didn't answer it right away. She stepped back like the sound had physically pushed her, hand going to her mouth, eyes still on mine. I thought, stupidly, that maybe she wouldn't pick up, that she'd let it ring until it stopped, and choose us instead. She didn't. Hello. Her voice was steady again. Too steady. I watched her face change in pieces. Confusion first, then something like disbelief, then the kind of stillness that means the ground just shifted under someone's feet. Yes, she said. He's here. That word. Here. She turned slightly, angling her body away from me, like she was already protecting me from what was coming. No, she continued. No, I didn't tell him. A pause. Longer this time. I know, she said quietly. I know how it looks. My stomach dropped. I didn't ask who it was. I already knew. She ended the call without saying goodbye and set the phone down like it weighed too much. When she finally looked at me, her eyes were glassy, not with tears, but with something closer to shock. That was my son. The room tilted. I felt heat rush to my face, then drain away completely. He knows about me. He saw us at the store, she said. Last week. He didn't say anything then. I thought. She stopped herself. Swallowed. I hope. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Every argument I'd rehearsed vanished. Every brave thing I thought I'd say turned useless. What did he say? I asked. She shook her head. He asked if I was trying to replace his father. He asked how long I'd been lying. That's not, I know. She cut in, sharper than before. Then softer, immediately regretting it. I know it's not fair, but it's real. I stepped back without realizing it, suddenly aware of myself in her space. My age. My presence. The line I crossed just by standing there. I didn't want to hurt anyone, I said. I swear. She laughed once, broken. That's the worst part. Neither did I. She paced the room, running a hand through her hair, undoing the calm she usually wore like armor. I told myself I could manage this, that I could keep things separate. You over here, my life over there. She stopped in front of me. But I can't. Not anymore. The words landed like a verdict. So that's it? I asked. You decide, and I just disappear? Her face crumpled for half a second before she caught it. I'm trying to protect you. From what? My voice cracked. From loving you? She looked at me then like she was memorizing my face. Every line, every flaw, like she already knew she was going to lose this. You deserve someone who doesn't hesitate, she said. Someone who doesn't look at you and see consequences first. And you deserve someone who doesn't walk away every time it gets hard. I shot back, immediately wishing I hadn't. Silence rushed in to fill the space between us. I need time, she said finally. I need to fix this. With him. With myself. My chest hurt in a way I didn't have a word for. And what am I supposed to do in the meantime? She stepped closer, then stopped herself again. Always stopping. Don't wait for me, she whispered. I nodded. Another lie. I walked to the door, hand on the handle, knowing if I stayed 1 second longer, I'd beg. Before I opened it, I turned back. I meant what I said. I told her. I won't take it back. Her eyes filled then. Finally. I know, she said. The door closed behind me. And for the first time since this began, loving her didn't feel risky. It felt impossible that I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. I tried to do what she asked. Give her time, give her space, but my body didn't understand the instruction. Everything reminded me of her. Coffee gone cold. A notification that wasn't her name. Silence that felt personal. On the third day, I was standing at a bus stop I didn't need to be at, watching people come and go when my phone rang. Her name. I answered without thinking. Hey, can you come over? She asked. No apology. No explanation. Just raw honesty. Please. I was there in 15 minutes. She opened the door before I knocked. She looked exhausted, not broken, just stripped of all the careful layers she usually wore. Her eyes searched my face like she needed proof I was real. He knows, she said immediately. Everything. I didn't ask who. Okay. I didn't defend myself the way I should have, she continued, voice shaking. I let him be angry. I let him say things that hurt, because I thought maybe I deserved it. You don't, I said. She nodded, but didn't quite believe me yet. I told him I wasn't replacing anyone, that I wasn't running for my life, that I was choosing something new. My chest tightened. You didn't have to. I did, she interrupted. Because I realized something. She stepped closer. This time, she didn't stop. I've been living like love is something that happens to me. Something I react to. Something I survive. She reached for my hand. Fully this time. No hositashchen. I don't want to live like that anymore. I swallowed hard. And what about me? Her thumb brushed my knuckles, grounding me. I'm terrified, she said. Of the age difference. Of what people will say. Of hurting him again. Of hurting you. That's a long list, I murmured. She almost smiled. But losing you is on it now. And I can't ignore that. The room felt charged, like the air before a storm finally breaks. I stepped closer until there was no space left to negotiate. I don't need certainty, I said. I just need honesty. She looked up at me, eyes shining. Then here it is. I love you. Not carefully, not safely, just honestly. My breath left me in a rush. I cupped her face without thinking, thumbs brushing the edges of her jaw. She leaned into it like she'd been waiting. This doesn't fix everything, she whispered. I know. This will be complicated. I know. She hesitated one last time, forehead resting against mine. And if it all falls apart, I kissed her then. Not dramatic, not rushed, just enough to answer the question. When we pulled back, she laughed softly through tears. You're really not afraid. I am, I said. I'm just choosing you anyway. She rested her head against my chest, like that decision finally had somewhere to land. Outside, a car passed. Somewhere a phone buzzed. Life kept moving. We didn't talk about the future, but we stopped pretending this was something we could walk away from. And for now, that was enough. The quiet after choosing each other wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like waking up the morning after a storm and realizing the house was still standing. We didn't run away together. We didn't announce anything. We moved slowly, carefully, not because we were afraid again, but because we finally understood the weight of what we were holding. Her son didn't forgive her overnight. That hurt her more than she admitted. I saw it in the way she stared out the window when his name came up, in the way she reread his messages before replying, choosing every word like it could undo damage. I never tried to compete with that. I couldn't. I wouldn't. Instead, I waited, not passively, but with intention. I learned that loving someone older didn't mean being less important. It meant loving someone who had scars you didn't cause, but still had to respect. Loving someone who had already failed once and wasn't eager to fail again. She learned that wanting me didn't make her weak. That choosing happiness wasn't a betrayal of her past. That love didn't always come when life was neat and ready. It showed up when you were tired and unsure and still brave enough to open the door. People noticed. Of course they did. The looks, the pauses, the subtle questions disguised as jokes. She straightened her shoulders through all of it. I stayed close, not possessive, just present. One evening, weeks later, we sat on her couch again. Same spot, same quiet. But this time, the space between us was gone. You know, she said, tracing circles on my hand, I spent years thinking the right thing would feel safer. And I asked, and I was wrong, she said. It just felt empty. I leaned my head back against the cushion. I thought loving you would feel like chasing something I couldn't have. She smiled softly. And now it feels like choosing something every day. She looked at me then, the way she had that first afternoon, but without the fear this time, without the calculation, just honesty. I didn't listen when you confessed, she said. Not because I didn't hear you, but because I wasn't ready to believe someone could love me without conditions. I squeezed her hand. I wasn't ready to be patient, but I learned. We didn't promise forever. We didn't pretend love solved everything. We promised effort, truth, staying when it was uncomfortable, and that felt real. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that moment in the cafe. The unfinished coffee. The words stuck in my throat. If I hadn't spoken when I did, if she hadn't finally listened, we would have become another almost. Another story that lives only in regret. Instead, we became something imperfect and alive. And maybe that's what love actually is.